Hey y'all, it's November 3rd, end of the day, after church. Came back out to shoot you a little video. Rich stopped by and welded the pipe back into one piece. After I had tacked it together, I made the exhaust probe bung that he put on, and the spring clips or mounts. He welded those on as well, and welded solid together the U-pipe. Couple different things going on here. Obviously, super jumbo volume pipe compared to what we've had on. Super jumbo size carburetor compared to what we had on. We got a much shorter, 4 inches shorter of the U-pipe here than the pipe we had been running, which was actually, I don't know, just an eighth of an inch or so shorter than a stock standard full U 180 U tube. So we're over 4 inches shorter than the stock standard tube. Oh, Robert, you can't do that. Bull pucky. Yes, you can, and watch me. I would run you through the whole analogy of the old days in the slippy pipe, right? Which is the stinger tube being straight, being pulled into the pipe with a cable, shortening it up, changing the back pressure, giving you, it's like nitrous. If you've ever used a slippy pipe, you know, you can feel it. It's like hooking up a slipping clutch, as you know, however you want, as quickly as you want, and man, it really gets going. So this is going to help us on the oval. I'm completely sold on the fact that the shorter that pipe is, one, it's going to add more heat, just like the slippy pipe did. But it's going to help our top speed. The slippy pipe was for top end when it was pulled in, when it was the shortest. So I think we're going to be okay. We have a needle carburetor we can adjust for whatever heat issue we got going on here. Needle carb. Geez, Robert, you mentioned you thought you found something. Remember the dripping carb in the other videos, right? I think I know why. Bob doesn't believe me, but the rest of you, come on over here and I'll show you what happened. I put the original needle back in the carburetor. Before I removed it because it was bent, I fixed it. I'd set the needle, I'd turn the needle all the way in until it stops. And you know, with the needle carb, it's a hard stop. You can't crank any more out of that. And I put a mark on here to literally mark where 0 is. So when I go half, 1, 1.5, 1 3/4, I know 3/4 is 3/4, right? Well, when I was setting it up and the needle was bent, I wanted to replace it. So I took the needle out of this carb. Remember, I'm sure you remember seeing it, right? The black needle with the yellow dot on it. This is how these needles are set up. I took everything off. The O-ring, the plastic spacer, not a brass washer or a copper washer. It's a brass washer on most carbs, and the spring, right? And I measured everything with the caliper, made sure the original red needle was the same as this black needle, and it was identical. And when I went to go put everything back together, I couldn't find this. Well, what happened was when I unscrewed it, I guess, from the carburetor, just like it did just now before I turned the video on. As you can see, this carburetor, it's got like a big guard around the needle hole, right? Around that circuit hole. Well, the O-ring was in there, and the little plastic spacer was stuck to the O-ring, and they were in there. Well, what happened, folks, is when I put this needle in that carburetor, this stuff must have stuck to the other needle, to the other carburetor. So when I put this needle in, I actually had 2 of these spacers. Now I'm going to show you something. I'm going to guess. I guess that this is about 1/8 of an inch. The thickness of that washer. Let's just measure just to find out. 1/8 inches, 125, right? This says 116. So almost, not bad for an eyeball. 116 thousandths. You put 2 of those on, and that would explain why every time I adjusted that black needle, I kept checking the settings because the carb was dripping. It wouldn't stop hard like it does here. Like the low end does the same way. It didn't stop hard. You could actually, if you cranked it, you could still turn it a little bit. And then every time I checked the winds on the needle and I came back to zero, instead of pointing here every time like it is now, 0 would be here, 0 would be over there. It would actually be like that, you know. It always was in a different spot, but never where it was with this needle. So what I did, talking to Ace on the phone a few days ago, Ace was going, he's talking, and I came in here and I just looked at it and I started unscrewing that black screw, and lo and behold, there were 2 of these spacers on that needle. What was happening, folks, is the spring was compressing and stopping the needle from turning before it actually bottomed out. So, think about it. 1/8 of an inch, I want you to look. Look at how fine the threads are on this thing. Those are some very fine threads. Tillotson now wants you to set your carburetor turn, not by 1/8 of a turn, 1/4 turn, 1/2 a turn, 3/4 of a turn. They actually give you like minutes, right? Minutes, seconds of a minute, I think. I think it's seconds. They tell you how many seconds of a minute. I mean, that's how technical it's gotten. You throw 116 thou of extra space in there, man, that could be 3 turns of that needle. No wonder the darn thing was burping out fuel, just dripping it on out. So now that the pipe's done, we'll get some fuel in this thing and we'll start it up and just run it for a few minutes. One, to make sure there's no little leaks in any of the welds, because if there is, we'll see oil pissing out of it from it running. And we can set the carburetor, which this should be, I think, 1.5 on the top. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, we'll go 3/4. I was thinking it was 3/4, 1.5, and 3/4. So if it starts and runs now and it doesn't drip, which I think that's gonna solve the problem. Bob, well, your needle and seat. Needle and seat lets the fuel into the carb, right? Then it lets it into the top of these 2 circuits. These needles control the fuel that get into the bore of the carburetor. Okay, so Bob doesn't agree. That's okay. That's okay. We can agree to disagree. But I think this is going to solve the problem. So, call it myself. We could have been over to Grattan, got in this go-kart, and not been able to get it to run clean, not known about that spacer on the carburetor, and gave up on this carburetor altogether before we ever get this thing to Daytona. So everything happens for a reason. I'm telling you. So, all this is fixed up, ready to go. We're going to jump right on these stub axles and get those cut off in the next day or 2 and welded back up. So we're hoping, today's Wednesday, the 3rd. By the end of the weekend, all of this stuff is done, cleaned up, done, mounted, done. We'll get the right gearing for Daytona on this bad boy and get it running. After we get past the running portion and checking the leaks in the pipe and what have you, we'll tear the tanks off, start making our mock-up, and we'll bring you that stuff next. Hang in there, y'all. Godspeed. God bless. I'm praying for you. Brent, what do you think? What do you think about the space run? I'm telling you, that's the cause. That was the cause. I love it when a plan comes together.